Welcome back to Hardball. Trayvon Martin's friend Rachel Jeantel was a major focus of George Zimmerman's trial, but how did her testimony play to the jury? Well, according to the juror who spoke out last night on CNN, Jeantel's message simply didn't come across as credible. Well, the juror said her poor communication skills played a role, and the fact that she used phrases that the juror didn't herself understand. Ultimately, the juror said she felt sorry for the 19-year-old witness who clearly didn't want to be there. Also, last night, Jeantel spoke out for the first time since the trial, telling CNN she thought things would have been different that night if Trayvon Martin had been white.
It was racial. Let's be honest, racial. If Trayvon was white and he had a hoodie on, would that happen? Because that was around 7 o'clock or something. That's around that. People walk their dogs, people stay outside. When you tell your child, when you see a grown person follow you, run away and all that, was you gonna stand there? You gonna tell your child to stay there? If you tell your child to stand there, we gonna see your child on the news.
Well, Jeantel also spoke about Zimmerman's injuries.
When somebody bashed somebody, like blood people, trust me, in the era I live, that's not bashing. That's just called whoop. You just got whooped.
Was Jeantel able to express herself better on TV there? And what does that say about the prosecution? Did they fail to better prep her for the trial and for her testimony? And with me now is Seema Iyer. She's a criminal defense attorney, and Keisha Hebben was a prosecutor. Thank you, ladies, for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
I want you to try to stick as much as you can to the trial and what we missed, what failed, what succeeded, what the jury should have seen and didn't see. Let's keep it within the legal framework, not the social framework, although that may be relevant. If it is, let me know. Let's start with you, Seema. What about that witness? She didn't seem to want to be there. How about motive? I get the feeling watching her that she had an attitude about being there, which could have been based on anything, but it seemed like she just didn't want to be testifying in that case, and I think that hurt the prosecution.
Chris, she didn't want to be there. She showed that she was recalcitrant from the minute she walked in. And who do I blame? Not this 19-year-old young woman. It is the prosecution. Now, you asked us to keep it legal. Chris, this is what we do. And I'm a former prosecutor, as a criminal defense attorney, you woo your witnesses. You court them. You keep in touch with them. You make them comfortable. You make them believe in you and believe in the case. And you make them feel welcome from the moment they walk in. She was not prepared. And why we know she wasn't prepared? Because, for instance, with that letter that they were trying to get into evidence, clearly the prosecutor did not know that Ms. Jeantel could not read cursive handwriting, and she was embarrassed. The prosecution could have prevented this embarrassment by stipulating to the letter in evidence with the defense. I can go much more further with this, but you can also see my article on this case, msnbc.com, Chris.
Okay, so basically they made a lot of technical mistakes in asking their witness, witness for the prosecution, if you will, to read a letter they hadn't even gone through with her. In other words, she said, I remember from the testimony, she said, I can't read cursive writing. In this case, it may have been somebody's particular cursive writing. But what about this? Let me be very ethnic now. Would an African-American associate in that prosecution team have been more helpful in being a liaison between the prosecution boss, whoever it was, and the witness? Would that have helped?
You know what? I don't think that's relevant, because any trial attorney is going to prepare their witness for trial. As Seema said, it's very clear that the prosecution did not sit down with Ms. Jeantel. They did not go over every question with her. They did not make her feel comfortable. And what surprised me is they did not prepare her that she would be there for a long time and to remain calm when she's cross-examined. That's one of the things I always do when I prepare a client or any witness for a trial. I prepare them for the questions. I go through each question and I make sure they feel comfortable. And credibility is key in any jury trial. And unfortunately, I think the prosecution blew this case. Okay,
let's get into particulars here. I want you to start, Seema. What could the witness there for the prosecution, could she have said, Rachel Jeantel, could she have said to that jury of 6 women that would have altered their judgment?
What she could have done is been just her demeanor was off and presented the inconsistencies that, frankly, were trivial to the relevancy of the case. And again, Chris, I'm sorry, I put this on the prosecution. There were so many questions that Don West posed to Ms. Jontel about Trayvon Martin. What was he thinking and why was he doing certain things? Chris, that is legally objectionable. You cannot ask a witness on the stand about what someone else who frankly is dead, what they were thinking and what they were doing, because you did not observe it, and that is state of mind. So I put this on the prosecution.
And I also agree that with Ms. Jontel's demeanor and her somewhat aggressiveness, it kind of put in the jurors' minds that, okay, if she has this type of attitude, is that what Trayvon Martin had? Is
That's
that
right.
why, you know, Mr.
What about the cracker comment? I mean, I'm a northerner. Cracker's not a word I hear from black or white. It's not. It must be a local term. It's southern, I guess, but certainly southern. But what did you make of? Didn't she say something that didn't seem to bother her as an ethnic term of derision? Yeah,
I think it was an ignorant term, and I think that she, being 19 years old, did not think of the consequences of using those types of terms. And, you know, I think it did hurt the prosecution to bring out that type of mentality.
But it also went to how authentic Rachel Jontel was. And again, tying this back into the case, during summation, the prosecution did not vouch for Rachel Jontel enough, did not promote how authentic and how honest she was about her observations during the incident.
Let's take one last look at this. Here last night, the juror, and she was quite effective with a lot of people last night on CNN. She was asked about Jontel's testimony. Actually, let's watch what she said last night.
I didn't think it was very credible, but I felt very sorry for her. She didn't ask to be in this place. She didn't ask. She wanted to go. She wanted to leave. She didn't want to be any part of this jury. I think she felt inadequate toward everyone because of her education and her communication skills. I just felt sadness for her.
Seema and then Keisha, both of you. My reaction to this juror who's speaking out now is not good. I get the feeling that everything she's saying is filtered through a PC, politically correct, say the right stuff. You're sympathetic to everybody. You love everybody. And you don't think race had anything to do with this, blah, 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 blah. I just thought it's so antiseptic, I don't buy it. Your thoughts, Seema, first.
If we didn't think race was involved in this case or involved in the verdict, we certainly do now after hearing from her. And Chris, let me just remind everyone, her husband is an attorney. So that type of sanitary or sanitized interview that's where it may have come from. Frankly, she was completely patronizing in saying that Rachel Jontel was inadequate or felt inadequate because she was uneducated. She's 19. Give her a chance to get an education.
I know. I agree. Like, Keisha, your thoughts on what do you think of the jury who's speaking out now? Apparently has a book ready to go with.
Yeah, I think that juror did use the politically correct lingo, and I think there was not any sincerity in whether this woman felt insecure or felt some type of way about her lack of education or ability to communicate. I think the juror was patronizing, and I do think that it showed that the juror did not give this woman any credibility whatsoever and just basically wrote her off to be as someone who just didn't know what she was talking about, and, you know, it didn't give it much help for the prosecution's case.
I think if you're prejudiced in favor of George, you probably like to see the failure of that witness to do as badly as she did. And I get the feeling there's some of that at play here. We're all human, and I'm watching. Anyway, thank you. Great witnesses you two were, and experts. Seema Iyer, thanks very much. I'm not being patronizing. Your laugh. Don't laugh when I say stuff. I mean it. Anyway, thank you, Keisha, for coming on as well. We'll be right back after this.